What's up guys, and welcome to my review of the Transformers Earthrise Titan class Scorponok. Here I have Scorponok displayed within his base mode or Battlestation mode, and this figure is absolutely massive. This is one of the biggest Titan class figures we've gotten since Fort Max and Metroplex. It's rather difficult to convey how big this figure truly is at the moment, but you can see that Zarek is roughly a deluxe class figure and he is just dwarfed by this massive city base. Now throughout this review I'm probably going to adopt a hands-on camera method, as this figure is just so huge and I won't really be able to convey it in a way that will look professional. So if you do witness some slight shaky cam, I do apologise. I will definitely do my best to convey this figure in as much detail as possible. Before we get into the main base itself, we'll first of all take a closer look at Zarek himself. Before I get into the review of Scorponok, I'm first of all going to be showcasing something which many of you requested within my double dealer review, and that was whether or not you can in fact store the missile underneath the base of the bird mode. And yes, you can in fact do so. If you flip under to the underside, there are two ports, and of course we do have the two ports of the missile, so you can simply just align that up like so, and here you have double dealer sporting that ridiculously large missile from underneath him. It is rather loose due to the second tab being quite squat in compared to the first, but it is definitely something you can do if you so desire, so I just thought I'd very quickly showcase that for those of you commenting in the previous video. Starting off with Lord Zarek himself, you can see that this is a fantastic interpretation of the character, very faithful to his original design, and I think Hasbro have done a magnificent job in capturing his robot mode, and the fact that this figure actually converts into Scorponok's head to me is really well done. Taking a closer look at the details, we can see here that he does have a rather unimpressed looking head sculpt with a really nice silver paint and some red paint details. I'm not a huge fan of the colour of plastic that they've used here for the torso. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it looks awful, but it is more along the lines of what we got with the Siege Ape face, in the fact that it is more of a soapy-like colour than rather just a plain white or tan. We can see we have got some nice detailings here for the arms, as well as on the legs with the purple paint apps here looking really nice. If we turn to the back, we do have quite a fair amount of kibble on the back. We do have Scorponok's visor as well as his main face. However, we'll get a closer look at that in just a second. In terms of articulation, we do have a ball joint at the head, as this is actually a headmaster, so he can look left to right and up and down ever so slightly. A full 360-degree rotation at the arms, as well as a hinge joint out to the sides. He does also have a joint here for transformation, allowing you to raise or lower the arms depending on what you so desire. We do get a full 360 rotation at the bicep, however it is limited due to the side of Scorponok's head, and we also do get a double joint at the elbow due to transformation. No wrist articulation unfortunately, however it's not a massive deal breaker for me, but the wrists can hinge forwards and backwards due to the transformation. A full 360-degree rotation at the waist, legs can kick forwards that far, as well as back to about that far and out to the sides. Full 360 rotation at the thigh, and we also do get a 90-degree bend at the knee, which is on a very soft ratchet joint. And then finally, as per tradition with Earthrise and Siege, we get a fantastic ankle rocker joint. So definitely a super cool figure, and I'm so glad that they did actually make Scorponok's head transform. Comparing Zarek to that of Full Tilt that came with Trypticon, you can see that these figures are very similar in terms of their scale. So if you have Trypticon, you'll know what to expect with Zarek here. Just giving you an eye to eye. It's quite difficult to convey a head to head as the shoulders are quite large. So if I can just raise the arm down ever so slightly, you can see that Full Tilt is ever so slightly bigger than Zarek. But I think that these two look really cool together, and they are roughly a larger deluxe scale. They're more along the lines of perhaps Siege Ironhide. And whilst on the topic of Ironhide, here I have him here for a size comparison. So you can see that he is definitely a fairly large looking deluxe class, and isn't as tall as Ironhide, but is definitely more in keeping with the scale that Ironhide sets for the deluxes, rather than a character such as Prowl or even Mirage. Turning to the headmaster feature that Zarek does in fact incorporate, we can simply just remove his head as per tradition with some of the Titans Return figures, and you just simply want to pull all this down and then hinge the arms out on either side on ball joints. And there is also some nice detailing here, such as the red visor and some nice sculpted in panel lining for the torso as well as the legs. And the articulation is as you would imagine, so ball joint at the head, ball joints at the arms, and then finally two joints here for the legs for the conversion, and one for, I presume, where his knees would be. So quite a cool feature, and once again is just another really nice touch that Hasbro has incorporated into this Titan class figure. Wrapping things up now for Zarek, we'll get his main body transformed up into the head configuration for the Scorpion and Robot mode. I will be leaving the Headmaster off, as that does actually have a role to play within the Scorpion mode. So just showcasing you here, you want to just fold the wrist in, and you can see this plug here that will peg into the port. So just snap that into place and repeat the same process here for this side. Fold down these panels on both sides, come to the legs now, and we can in fact clip these together on both sides. So just snap those into place. You're going to want to take this section and pull this out, and then bring this whole assembly down, and then we can just take these and shift these inwards, as the hollow gaps that we have here for the shins will actually hold the forearm sections of Zarek. And then just collapse this one in also. And then we finally want to bring this all down. Underneath here, there are 2 ports that will plug into the 2 tabs that are situated underneath the torso. So just align those up, compress that, bring the ear sections up. And then here what we can do is actually bring this whole panel up, and you can actually reveal some super nice details that Scorponok does in fact have eyes underneath the visor. It's not something that is really much of a play feature, as there is no way to actually hinge the visor. It is just held on via a screw. So I guess if you really wanted to, you could remove the screw and have this face for Scorponok. There isn't a gimmick where you can actually slide the visor up. And this is probably the best look you're going to be able to get of the head of Scorponok without the visor. So you can see super nice silver paint apps, as well as some really crisp green paint apps for the eyes. I just think that's such a cool feature. And once again, was something that they didn't have to include, but you just want to raise this section up and then collapse this over the top, ensuring that these tabs are all pegged into the sides. And here we have Scorponok's head prepared for the transformation of the Scorpion mode. And here we have the base mode. So you can see here that this section is the ramp. Something which I absolutely love about this is that it is so reminiscent to the original G1 toy. We've got a really nice gunmetal plastic here, and I do believe that this area is in fact painted in a gunmetal. So that's super cool. I think that the colour match between the plastic and the paint has been really nicely done. And then we've also got some nice blue paint apps here as we work our way up. And then here at the top, there are also some nice details of some arrows and a really nice blue and orange paint. And then as we work our way up to this section, some really nice sculpted in detailing here as well for the plastic. And then this whole area's got the claws, and it almost looks as if though it's got somewhat of a face, with the orange depicting the nose and the mouth, as well as 2 blue eyes, which I think is super nice. And then as we take a look at where the Scorpion arms would be, we do in fact have the gun and a part that makes up the shield for the robot mode. But of course we'll take a more detailed look at that later on. And then here we've got the legs. So much mechanical detailing on this figure, it's really nice. This is one of my favourite Titan class figures Hasbro have put out in a long time. And here we've got some nice details of the green, and the purple plastic is really cool. And then as we just come around to this ramp, this also has been painted in a really nice orange paint app, and it even has details of arrows. So just overall a super cool looking base mode. There isn't really much else to say about this mode, so I'll bring out some comparisons and then we'll get this all transformed up for the Scorpion mode. But definitely quite a nice mode, probably not one that I'll be revisiting anytime soon, as I think that the other 2 modes, more specifically the robot mode, are far superior, but it's just a really nice nod to the original Generation 1 toy. So here for some size comparisons, here I have the Earthrise Optimus Prime, and you can see that the main tip of the ramp actually comes up to roughly where I would say Optimus's truck windows begin. So just to give you an example of how big the actual ramp goes, and then if I bring out the Siege Deluxe class crosshairs, we can just gather a sense of how big and how wide this figure is compared to a Deluxe class. And then finally we'll bring out the Siege Deluxe Barricade, which is the same mould that we've got with Prow and Blue Streak. And you can see that just a really big looking figure. To gather a better sense of the scale, here I've got a more bird's eye perspective of 2 Deluxe figures from the Siege line, compared here to the massive Scorponok base mode. This really is a fantastic looking piece and takes up almost this entire review area that I've got. So a really cool looking base mode. In terms of features, there are none that I've really found that I think are solid. However, I have found some feature which I can definitely see making for some fantastic play options. So if Hasbro didn't intend to include this, and considering that this flap here doesn't really have any other function, then I'm not entirely sure as to its purpose. But you simply just lift this up, and then it almost acts as almost a trapdoor. You can spring this section up, and in here we have the Scorpion legs. You can move these and almost have it look as if though these are grabbing whatever falls in there, which I think is quite cool, and it's definitely something that I could imagine Hasbro doing. So perhaps this is a trapdoor and they get eaten up or munched up by whatever's under there. So that's definitely quite a cool feature if that is what it is intended to be. Now for transformation, the first thing you're going to want to do here is remove the gun as well as this shield piece. They are held in via these ports and tabs that will peg onto the side of the forearm. And we're just going to want to detach those and set those off to the side, and then repeat the exact same process here for the opposite side. So just detach these and set those off to the side. We can then turn our attention to this area, and here we're just going to want to fold up the ramp and repeat this also on the opposite side. Now what we can do is actually remove this whole section. So this will just pry off and is once again held in via these two tabs that will plug into those slots. So just pull this off. And whilst we are on the topic of this, you can in fact see that there is a seated area with a port that you will actually take the headmaster and collapse it in and then peg it in for this particular mode, which I think is super cool. And then you can just collapse this and there is a cavity so it won't squish this, and you can have that housing the headmaster for this particular form. Now what we can do is detach this whole ramp section and just leave this off to the side. We can then proceed to rotate the figure around, and I would recommend lifting up these flaps just so that you don't bump into any of the stuff when you're ratcheting the joints around. Fully elongate this section and then rotate this whole assembly around and pull this down. And then take this thigh section, and you're going to want to ensure that the painted area is actually facing down on the floor. So rotate this ratchet joint around, and then that will then proceed you to be able to lift this whole joint up here. And now you're going to want to take this whole section here and pull this so that this section is flush, but this section here is able to be lifted out of the way. And now we can just collapse this whole leg down, and you can actually see that this port will be filled by this hole. So just bring this all down, align this up appropriately and give that a nice squeeze. Rotate around now to the opposite side and then ratchet this joint so that the screw is facing the top, as we want a flat surface, otherwise this won't be able to sit flush. And then ratchet that section around. Take this whole piece and flip this forwards like we did previously. Bring this up, collapse the legs in and just fold this down, and it will peg into this hole via this slot. So just snap that into place, align it and peg it in. Now you're going to come to the underside, and we can actually see under here, if I just bring up some brightness, you can see this huge slot that will actually be filled by this tab. So you're going to want to come to this and snap that into place first. It doesn't really clip in, but it just helps it to sit more flush. And you can see here these huge clips that will actually peg into these tabs. However, first of all, you're going to want to take this ramp section and fold this down, and then that will allow for some clearance for some of the later steps that we're going to perform. Just align the clip up with the tab, snap that one into place, swivel it all the way around, and then snap that one in. And then we can come to this back area and actually pull this whole section out. And then of course that begins to reveal the actual scorpion tail. So fold this piece out, and then actually inside here there is another piece that you have to pull out. So just get my finger in there. We can fully extend the scorpion tail. And whilst we are at the back of the figure, if we lift this section up, there is in fact two slots here that will be utilized to store this part of the shield. So these ports will just align up and will clip into place, and you can just fold this up to your desire. Turning our attention now down to the arms, it's actually really straightforward. You're going to want to ratchet this down and then just ratchet this along, and you could bring this out as well. And then repeat the same process here for this side. So just bring this down and have that out to the side. And then one of the final steps we do before we attach the head is just lift this whole piece up here and just simply pull out all of the scorpion legs, which are stored in this huge cavity that I discussed about earlier on. So just pull all these out, collapse this down, and just position those to your so desire. Take the Scorponok head, and you're going to want to push this section in first, and it will grab onto these two clips here. The headmaster also has got a place to store for when we get him into robot mode, so I'll soon get him out of this piloting chair and I'll showcase that when we get him into robot mode. But you're going to want to put it in first so that this goes in, and then just clip that into place, and that will snap in. And then turning for some of the weapon storage, underneath the shielded pieces we do have these two plugs that will peg into these two ports on either side of Scorponok's back. So we just peg that in and then rotate this figure around, as he is massive now, so he is definitely taking up quite a significant amount of space. And we just want to align this up as well on the opposite side. So snap those into place, and then we can bring our attention to the front section. Take the cannons, which I have got to say I've got some fantastic detailing on them as well. These do definitely look like really heavy powered weapons, and we just want to use this huge post that will peg into the middle port. So just align that up and snap that one into place, and then align this one up as well and snap that one into place. And with all the transformation now fully completed, here we have Scorponok in his Scorpion mode, looking epic. This mode and the robot mode for me are by far the best out of all three of his modes. The base mode is definitely a nice nod to the original G1 toy, but I think it's really this mode and the robot mode that he really shines in. This looks so faithful to both the G1 toy and to the actual character's design within the cartoon series. I just think that he looks absolutely magnificent. You can see all of the sculpted in detailing on him as well. It just looks truly splendid. All the detail we've got in for the legs, the various different ports, which are merely there for sculpted detailings. All of these you can't actually attach weapons to. It's only these larger ones here that you can in fact plug blast effects or weapons into. And then as we turn our attention now to the back, we can see the huge scorpion tail, which has been done in a super cool purple. And we've also got the orange section for where I presume the stinger would be. I just love how bonkers this figure looks. And just bringing those back up, you can see he's got these epic looking shoulder cannons, very heavy duty, and these massive claws at the front which are articulated. I'll showcase that more in just a second. But first of all, taking a look at Scorponok's head, I just think this looks fantastic. In terms of articulation, we do get the swivel that we would utilise for Scorponok's robot mode. Just be careful you don't actually pop the head out. There is actually a mechanism here as well, a slight hinge joint, for you to raise it up for when it's in robot mode and to sink it down when it is in the Scorpion mode. I'm not sure whether or not this is intentional, but you can actually see it working there. The orange section can compress and extend depending on what mode you have him in. So if that is actually a function on this figure, really nice attention to detail by Hasbro. And I just think the detail looks super nice considering that this is simply just the back of the robot mode head. I think they've done a great job on all the different ports at the front. And then as we turn our attention now to the claws, these have also got some nice details on them. Silver paint, yellow paint apps. And the claws are articulated, 2 hinges for the 2 front ones, and then 1 big hinge here for this pincer. And then they can all shift together on this hinge here, which just articulates the hand. We do get a ratchet joint here, allowing you to bring them more forwards, and then of course a ratchet joint allowing you to swivel them so you can bring them closer to the face. And then of course we get the main ratchet joint, and the arm can ratchet forwards and backwards. However, that's mainly for robot mode. Taking a look at the blasters, these can swivel from side to side depending on how you wish to display him. And then moving right along to the legs, I just love how nicely detailed these are. And these are articulated here at a hinge. They're all individually articulated, by the way. However, I'm just going to group them so you can hinge those up. They also have another hinge here, so you can move those forwards and backwards. And then finally, we get a hinge at where the tips of the legs would be. So you can definitely get him into a very Scorpion-esque type position with these. And then as we turn to the side, we've got all this lovely frosted detailing here. This is actually one of my favourite parts of the figure, as well as some nice mechanical detail. All this sculpt work here. And then we get to the end of the figure, which is of course the deadly stinger towel. And in terms of articulation, the point of the stinger is articulated on a hinge joint, and this whole section here can also hinge, and you can finally also hinge this. So there's approximately 3 joints out of this, so you can definitely get this into whatever pose you wish. You can have it more compressed, more elongated. This is an issue I do have, is that the clips don't really support the weight of it if you're moving it around a lot. They are quite heavy duty, but it doesn't really take much to detach them, unfortunately. And just setting the camera back ever so slightly just so that we can bring in some size comparisons. Here we have the Deluxe class crosshairs. And for an upright robot mode comparison, here we have Earthrise Optimus Prime. So you can definitely see here Scorponok is massive, truly would devour any Autobots that come into his way. A huge looking piece and very intimidating within the collection. And just for a quick side perspective, here we have the Deluxe class crosshairs compared to Scorponok. You can see that it's absolutely massive, truly worthy of the Titan class title. In terms of how this figure rolls around in this mode, he does actually have some really heavy duty wheels, which I'll showcase on the base, but those do allow you to roll the figure forwards and backwards. And if I just tilt to the underside here, you can see that we've got these front caster wheels here, and then this main huge one at the back. This one here doesn't function whatsoever. This is just static and plastic for the tabbing mechanism within robot mode. But it definitely is held up by some very durable wheels, and I don't think that these are going to break nor cripple over time, and definitely do support the weight of this massive Titan figure. Now as we proceed to wrap things up for the Scorpion mode in order to get Scorponok transformed into the robot mode, I'll just give you a very quick demonstration of how you can actually remove this whole section. So you just want to bring this whole piece up, and in there you can see the tiny headmaster that does store in there, which is super cool. But for this mode we're going to want to remove it. Collapse this whole section down, just move the legs out of the way, and then we're going to want to come to the head, pull this whole assembly off, and it's the same trick as what we got with like Fortress Maximus. You're just going to want to clip that back in, and then we can just align the head up and snap that firmly into place. So the first step of transformation is to take the head and rotate it now all the way around to the front, so that of course we've got the head looking towards the front of the figure. We're then going to want to remove both of Scorponok's blasters, and then of course remove these side panels. Just pull both of these off, and then we can actually take these two pieces here and clip those together. Then we can turn our attention to the back section of Scorponok, and you saw earlier on where this piece stored. You're just going to want to remove it, so wriggle it all the way out, and then we can just combine these. So there are various different ports that these tabs here will slide into, and this acts as almost as a shield for Scorponok as well as a weapon, and the pincers do articulate, and we've got some fantastic details on this. However, once again, I'll take a more closer look at this when we get him into robot mode. I now recommend turning the figure on his side and just collapsing in all of these legs, so folding those in, and then taking the other lot and just making sure that they all fit in there. Just fold all of these in, and then sit him once again on his back. We can then roll to the front, and if this section hasn't untabbed via those clips, you're just going to want to fold that down, fold this piece down, and then rotate this and fold this down. This section here can stay open, as we're actually going to utilize that tab later on. Now we can come to the legs of the figure, detach this piece here, and pull this whole leg outwards on these really heavy duty ratchet joints. Very sturdy, as you would expect from a Titan class figure. Now we're going to just bring that to the back, and you're going to want to take this whole section here and ratchet all of this forward. We can then take this piece, and then this huge hole will actually plug into this tab. So just clip that into place. We can then bring our attention to the front and just fold out the Scorponok toe, and then of course bring that back to its original position. Rotate now to the opposite side and just repeat the exact same process. So bring all this down. You can pull the toe out now if you wanted to. And then just fold this all out, bring this down, align this port and this tab up, snap that into place, just straighten the whole leg up. We can then raise the figure upwards, as of course now we're going to begin working on the top. Take these arms here and rotate these down, just so that we don't bump into anything, and extend the figure now to the top. Turning my attention now to the top of the figure, this is where we're going to actually compress this whole back assembly. So you can see here that what will happen is that these tabs here and on this side will actually slide into these slots here. So just raise that all up and snap those into place on both sides. We can then bring this whole assembly up, and you can see this huge clip that will actually peg into this tab section that I spoke about earlier on. We also have got these two massive tabs here, and then there are two slots on the underside here and here that it will just help to further solidify the connection. We can then bring this whole section to the front, and you're going to want to rotate Scorponok's whole waist around now to the front. Bring down these huge arms on these big ratchet joints, and then just take the blasters, and these will insert into the same ports, however this time flipped on the opposite side. So just align the port and the tab up, and then repeat the same process here for the opposite side. Just snap that in, and then we can turn our attention to the shield area of Scorponok, and you can see various different tabs and ports. All you're going to want to do is utilize these two tabs here that will plug into these two ports. So just flip that over to the other side, connect into place, and here we have the absolutely huge, gigantuan Transformers Earthrise Titan class Scorponok, fully transformed and in his robot mode. Now, something which struck me straight upon opening this figure up was how large he was. I honestly wasn't expecting him to be this big. In the past, the Titan class figures had become slightly smaller than what we were used to with Fortress Maximus and Metroplex, but Scorponok is definitely up there in terms of scale with those figures, and he's even bigger than Omega Supreme, Devastator and Predaking, all of which I'll bring out for a comparison later on within this video. But you can see that this figure will no doubtedly have a huge presence presence within anyone's collection. And that's honestly the only criticism I could have about this figure, is that you should not buy this figure if you do not have the room to capacitate him, as believe it or not, he is absolutely huge. Due to Scorponok's enormous size, I will be breaking down the detail segments of this review. So starting off with the top, moving down to the torso, the arms, the lower region, and then finally the legs. To begin with, the head sculpt looks absolutely fantastic. You can see the silver paint applications as well as the red visor really complement each other really nicely. I love the detailing of the orange painted ears or the horns on either side, and you can see the neck brace here on the side as well. And you can also see what I was talking about earlier on, which I believe is for sculpting mode, although you could use it for robot mode, is that there is in fact a separate hinge allowing you to collapse the head down to make it look as if though perhaps he's looking down upon the Autobot, or you can have it risen to a more natural looking degree. You can also utilise the feature I showcased earlier on, where you lift up the visor, and you do in fact showcase some fantastic details such as the painted eyes. However, the visor cannot be risen up, and this section doesn't lift any further, so you merely can just utilise this as perhaps sunglasses for Scorponok, which is a slight shame, but if you prefer the other look, you could just simply take a screwdriver to that and remove that section. So just giving you one last look at the head sculpt. Really nice detail on this. It looks superb in my opinion, and very reminiscent to the G1 version of Scorponok. Turning now to the detail of the torso, I love the huge Decepticon insignia placed within the centre, the really crisp blue and orange paint apps for the torso, as well as all these different vents, loads of mechanical surface detailing, different tubing actually moulded within the purple plastic. And then if we turn to the side and just raise one of the arms up, you can see the thruster detailing that I was talking about earlier on. I just think that this figure looks absolutely superb. Thoroughly impressed with this release by Hasbro so far. Turning my attention now down to the arms of Scorponok. These are very similar to what we got within the Scorpion mode. So you can see all of the splendid silver detailing as well as the orange details. And these are articulated via this huge pincer here, as well as these individual fingers / pincers can also articulate. And then this whole section here moves as well. So if you compress these, this whole piece will move. And then we also get a ratchet joint here, which I believe is more so for the Scorpion mode than anything. And then we get a ratchet joint at the elbow, allowing for 90-degree bend of motion, as well as a ratcheted full 360 rotation just above the elbow. A ratcheted joint out to the sides, however it's more of a softer ratchet than the heavy duty ones we got earlier on. And then finally the arm can ratchet forwards and backwards the full 360 degrees. And then taking a look at the top shoulder, the turret can also rotate full 360 if you so choose. However, it's more than likely going to bump into this section if you wish for it to rotate this way. Turning our attention to the lower region of Scorponok, you can once again see all the fantastic detailing as well as the gunmetal paint apps. I really love the silver and blue that they've got here for the thighs as well. That looks superb. And then as we work our way down to the legs, the green plastic and purple complement each other incredibly nicely. The orange joints here for the ratchet joints, which I believe is an homage to the G1 toy. And then finally some nice mechanical detailing down for the toes. In terms of articulation here, it's very well articulated. The leg can ratchet forwards that far, and it does actually ratchet out to a far degree as well. And it can also ratchet out to this side, so it can in fact do the full splits. And that range of motion too is incredibly durable. Can ratchet out to the back all the way as well if you wished. And then just bringing that down. Full 360 rotation ratcheted joints just above where the thigh is, or in the middle of the thigh. And then we also get a ratcheted knee joint well over 90 degrees. It's almost a double jointed ratchet joint due to the transformation of the Scorpion mode. Bringing that back down. And then if we turn our attention now down to the final aspect of the figure, that being his feet, this was actually something that I was quite concerned about when I saw this at Toy Fair, was that the feet actually do appear to be hollow. However, I can assure you that he does in fact stand really nicely, and I don't really have any problems about the plastic warping or breaking. These ratchet joints here really do take the majority of the weight, where these ones merely are here to support. It perhaps would have been nice if they could have found a more solid way, but due to the way the legs convert for transformation, I couldn't really find them filling out that hollow space. And personally for me, you only see it from this angle, and as I stated, I don't think it's going to be a structural problem at all. As you can see that this one, I'm actually able to move forwards and backwards, so this is actually isn't holding any of the weight whatsoever. It is mainly just this ratchet joint here, and this whole foot area seems incredibly durable. But in terms of articulation and ankle rocker joint, you do get an ankle rocker joint out to about that degree on both sides, which does allow for a quite wide stance with the figure. So you can definitely have him in a very wide stance, which I think is quite cool. However, unfortunately, we can't really utilise the ratchet joint forwards and backwards due to these pieces here restricting it. For a size comparison, here I have Fortress Maximus compared next to the original Titan class, that being Metroplex. Unfortunately, I don't have Fortress Maximus, however, Metroplex and Fort Max I believe were based upon the same mould, so if you do have Fort Max and are of course looking for his rival, I think that these two will scale rather nicely. And you can see that Scorponok, whilst it's not as big as Metroplex, is definitely more along the lines of the original Titan class scale than some of the more recent ones that we got. And here for another size comparison, here we have Titan class Scorponok compared next to the most recent Titan class figure, that being of course Omega Supreme, and you can see that he is actually a lot bigger than Omega Supreme. Not quite as tall as where the wing pieces of Omega Supreme begin to extend, but in terms of a head-to-head comparison, Scorponok is absolutely gigantuan. And for comparison, here we have Scorponok compared next to Predaking, and you can definitely once again see that Scorponok towers over Predaking. Here we have Scorponok compared next to another Decepticon Titan class figure, that being Trypticon, and looking through it through this perspective, they are more or less eye to eye in terms of their scale, although Scorponok, if you do count right to the top of the head, does just ever so slightly look over the top of Trypticon, but still nevertheless a huge looking figure. And then for one final size comparison, here we have Scorponok compared next to Combiner Wars Devastator, Earthrise Optimus Prime, as well as Deluxe class Cliffjumper, and as per tradition with Scorponok, it seems he completely dwarfs any of these figures. So that was my very in-depth review on the Transformers Earthrise Titan class Scorponok. If you haven't guessed already from this review, I actually really enjoy this Titan class figure. Let's start off with a few points. So we'll begin with robot mode. I think that this is by far the superior mode out of all of his modes. He looks fantastic within this mode. His presence, just in terms of how big he is, truly is something to behold of, and is something that shocks you upon first opening this figure up. I also think that the colour distribution as well as the paint apps all look splendid. I absolutely love the green and purple plastic combination. I think that those two colours complement each other really nicely. The subtle areas of silver and slightly more orange hues are also welcome, and they do definitely help to differentiate some of the details from the sculpt. I do think the head sculpt is fantastic. The fact that it can transform into Zarek is truly fantastic. Hasbro did a great job in getting a really nice looking head sculpt to transform into Zarek, and the fact that Zarek's head can also come off to become a headmaster is also a really nice nod. I think that the small Easter egg that you can in fact lift the visor up to reveal the real eyes of Scorponok is a really nice attention to detail. And in terms of accessories and articulation, I think that he's absolutely decked out with both. Accessories, he comes with a great range, and I also think that his articulation is superb, especially for how big he is. All the ratchet joints can in fact support the weight, which has been a common issue with some of the Titan class figures such as Metroplex and Devastator. I don't have any qualms about putting this figure in a dynamic pose, as all of the ratchet joints do feel incredibly robust. Turning to Scorpion mode, I think that this is a great resemblance to Scorponok's original G1 character, and it also does look very faithful to the original G1 toy. And talking about the G1 toy, the base mode or the Battlestation mode is a great nod to the original toy, and I definitely think it captures the original look really nicely. It is a shame that there is no accessories such as Fast Track, however, considering how big this figure is and how many accessories he already comes with, I don't think of that as too much of a drawback, and I'm not really sure what they would do with him in Robot mode or Scorpion mode, so I think that he's a worthy sacrifice. Personally, I absolutely love this Titan class figure and would be really eager to know what your thoughts are on the newest release by Hasbro in terms of their Titan class assortment. Scorponok, as of now, is one of my favourite Titan class figures, and I really cannot wait to see what they come up with in 2021. Thank you for watching this review. If you liked it, please let me know down in the comment section below, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.